Hi, I'm Megan.
I'm Erin.
And we're the Office Ladies.
We're not. This is utterly unrelated. The podcast you've been waiting for all your life. It makes me
That's
laugh.
our music.
What are we talking today?
Today, you're going to hear a lot of this.
Flipping papers.
So I took several pages of notes, and I don't know how to work computers, so I just write it with my hands. So it's lots of this. When I do this, it means I'm thinking.
It's old school.
And actually, this story brings me back to the old school because, do you guys remember when I did a whole episode on Oregon City that seemingly went nowhere? This is it going somewhere. It is all related, friends. Yes. And so this entire thing is, I would say it's the money shot, but we're going to talk about dead teens, and so I think that would be disrespectful. This is the reason I told you about Oregon City. So anyway, I wanted to tell you guys about Ward Weaver, and not just that he committed crimes, because we know that, but that he was the third Ward Weaver, first of all. There are, as far as I know, no more after him. This was by no means an isolated incident in this family. Ward Weaver the first was a real abusive piece of shit that had met Ward Weaver Jr.'s mother in a house of ill repute. Nothing against those. Just to give you some context. And he more or less had liked her so much that he decided to bring her home and torture her without having to pay by the day. And not literal. He wasn't pulling straps of skin off of her or anything. Just the regular marriage type of torture.
I was just gonna say marriage.
It was marriage. I mean, and don't get me wrong though, he did torture her, but it was more like psychological torture. He was physically abusive to everyone inside of arm's reach. He was a real piece of shit. The issue with a lot of this is, in researching this, generally, instead of saying Ward the First, Ward the Second, and Ward the Third, people would make up fun little nicknames, which is great, but not great for researching. And so there's some things on here that I had written for one of the wards, and it turned out to be the other, and so I'd have to circle it and go back, but it made everything get all twisted in my brains, all spaghetti-like.
There's too many Ward Weavers.
It's not even like it's an amazing name. It's Ward Francis Weaver. So, Ward the First decided to take this poor unfortunate gal home and marry her shortly thereafter, and they had a few kids that Ward the First would beat, and he sexually abused his two daughters, and actually his granddaughters as well. So Ward Weaver the Third's two sisters. Yeah. So once again, this guy, piece of shit. The mom is not a whole lot better. She's obviously reacting to damage that has been caused by men onto her.
Totally. Because
she, she beats the kids. And don't get me wrong, Ward Weaver the First, he may very well also be acting out trauma that was enacted upon him. But anyway, so she would beat the children. She would bite them to the point of bleeding.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She was known, this was kind of her shtick. It would happen so often that she'd pull out a knife and say all men should be castrated.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so just, pretty much everything you can do to fuck up some kids, they were like, yeah, let's do that.
Let's make a serial killer soup.
Yeah.
And we'll feed it to the kids
it's
every
very
night.
fucking Red Dragon.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so, and this actually comes back to haunt society, really. So Ward Weaver the First did not, that we know of, kill anybody. He's a real piece of shit. It's a maybe. He would also bring, if Ward Weaver, the first wife, did not want to engage in sexual acts with him, he would just find somebody who he could easily carry. I wouldn't even necessarily say somebody who was willing, because often it wasn't willing, and he would just bring them home and,
caveman style, just drag them back home.
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
Damn.
Yeah. So he would engage in willing or unwilling sexual acts with these people while she was home.
I bet she was like, "Oh God, it's a night off."
Yeah, probably at that fucking point.
Yeah, she was probably just so glad not to have to do whatever.
Yeah.
That's how. Yeah, I can see becoming complicit in that way.
Yeah.
Just, being so entrenched in this life of just misery and not even being able to tell right from wrong anymore because you're so warped by your captor. Because she sounds like a woman who was abducted and then forced to continue to abduct other women. Like those situations?
Yes, but it does seem that from all accounts, she was just a very mean person from the beginning. So her name, by the way, was Dorothy. She went by Dot, which is a very adorable name for a very mean person.
Dot Weaver. Yeah.
Right, it's very cute. She actually... Up until he was 18 and moved out and joined the army, she would force Ward Weaver II to sleep in bed with her. And there's, nothing that I'm saying, other than later on when I will outwardly state this is pure speculation. All of the things that I'm saying leading up to this are things that I've seen on multiple sources.
They're accepted as
fact,
yeah.
There's no, some people had speculated that nobody speculated that they had an incestuous relationship, actually, but some people had speculated that she would make him cuddle with her, or that it was just a thing they did. I've seen on a couple of sources that even on his wedding night, he slept in bed with his mom.
Oh God, can you imagine? Can you imagine marrying your husband and your mother-in-law is a fucking bitch, your father-in-law is a scary son of a bitch, and your husband's like, I'm gonna go snuggle up with mom. Bye.
Actually, and it's so, no joke, they've remained close, very, very, very close for the rest of their lives. This is Ward II and his mother Dorothy. Up until, I don't know, I'm assuming her death, they remained very close, and he would actually consult her on nearly everything.
Wow.
He was definitely, nothing against Mama's Boys, but he was definitely a textbook toxic version of a Mama's Boy. Damn. Toxic on both sides. So in this entire thing, there's this very applicable quote that was said by, I don't fucking remember who, but it wasn't me. I'm not this smart. And it had said that genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger.
God, that's brilliant.
That's
true.
Well, it is very true, because there's even... So, there's a TED Talk, I'll link it in the show notes, where this guy was saying that I believe he was related to Lizzie Borden.
Oh.
And who actually, deep dive, proves she likely didn't do it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I believe it was Lizzie Borden or perhaps some other notorious killer. And he had this certain gene that if it's not expressed, they're just a regular person. But if they witness violence or have violence enacted upon them at an early age, it could make this gene express where they themselves become very, very uncontrollably violent and homicidal. And so, but he had a fine life, and, and he's, I don't know, an accountant or something. He's just a regular, if you saw the dude, you'd be like, yeah, it's a regular guy. He's not handsome, he's not unhandsome, he's not tall, he's not short, he's not fat, he's not thin. And so this definitely, I think, really is a shining example of both nature and nurture, and I'll show you why throughout this entire episode because it keeps coming up. So one thing that's really crazy is the effects of Dot are shown throughout all of this. So it seems, oddly enough, that Ward Sr., despite being, the absolute worst, had less of an effect on Ward Jr. than Dot. For some reason, Ward Sr. was called Pete.
Oh.
Ward Jr. was so like him. I don't know if it's physically or if they acted similarly. Obviously they had some things in common. But he was actually referred to often by family as Little Pete. Pete and Little Pete.
Wow. You know, that's really interesting because if it almost seems like, okay, if they were similar and Dot is like unable to make the
Dot was the catalyst, I think.
Well, because it sounds like she kind of treats her son the way she should treat her husband, and they have similar characteristics. I'm not explaining this right.
Because she both parents were very, very abusive to all of their children. There was no... She didn't prefer one child or the other.
Oh, she didn't?
No,
okay,
No, she would bite Ward Jr. until he bled. She was very abusive, mentally abusive, psychologically. It was very, very much like Red Dragon.
I guess I'm trying to make sense of something that just doesn't make sense.
No, this shit it gets more bonkers and it doesn't make sense. And some people are just fucking evil. Sometimes, shit just happens and people just are bad people. And this is an instance of just two shitty people getting together.
And this is something...
It's not like she started out, super nice.
Yeah.
No, by all accounts, she was just a real shitty person the whole time.
Something about them together just made a perfect...
It made sense, yeah. Yeah. They were definitely a murderous benefer.
See, and you hit me with that when I wasn't expecting it because I was busy trying to remember what Ralph Fiennes' booty looked like when he would stand naked in Red Dragon, and it was
yeah, that was fine.
That was so good.
That's all right. I like his back muscles.
Oh God, those were he's underrated.
He's very underrated. I completely agree with you. He's also a very good character actor. He's very Liam Neeson character actor.
See, everyone's like, oh, he's fucking Voldemort. You know what? He's so much more than... He was so many things before he was Voldemort. Yeah. Ugh. Joseph Fiennes, in The Handmaid's Tale, he is so good at being a villain that I almost get that, villain...
I didn't know that was... I never linked the two.
Damn.
He's the guy with the eyebrows, yeah?
Yeah.
Now I can see it. Now I'm like, yeah, they're obviously related.
Oh, totally. Huh. But, they're so good. They're so good. I'm just going to, through the rest of this... Okay, because this is a story that I grew up with. These are we're talking about the boogeymen of our childhood. Ward Weaver, Wesley Allen Dodd, all these people who are
Wesley Allen Dodd for me was the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
These are people that we grew up with that were a real threat in our area.
Oh, yeah. Like I had said in the other episode, I lived a mile away as the crow flies. Yeah. I lived just pretty much on the other side of Fred Meyer from all of this.
It's terrifying. And so to talk about these people, I'm sitting here as an adult and I'm trying to make sense of it. And it still doesn't make sense the same way it didn't when I was little.
No, there is no making sense. You're not a shitty person. And so there's a lot of things that you would just have to base level accept as a terrible person to even make any of this seem feasible, plausible, all right in one manner or another.
Yeah. I think that's why I immediately was just like, I'm going to think about a cute butt.
Right.
Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah, you just tune the fuck out.
But I was like, I'm going to go there. Because this is
it gets so much darker. It gets so much darker. Because we haven't even gotten to the murder parts yet.
Well, this is just season 1 of the Ward Weaver situation. We're going to move on to...
There's so many different parts of this. So... 3. Okay, so we are done with talking about Ward Sr., but Dot, she remains as a constant in Ward II's life. Actually, pretty much, well, not single-handedly. I would say the abuse had some to do with it, but she actually had driven a wedge between Ward II and his wife because of he would consult her with everything. They actually went to live with them for a time. And it was so bad because Dot was just micromanaging everything. Imagine that. Like, imagine just this woman who's very overbearing, who is your husband's mother, just trying to dictate everything. And so that didn't last very long.
Not that this is funny, but, like, I wonder how that would have gone down with Ward II's wife if, like, Dot tried to bite her for dominance or something. You know, like I'm just curious if outside the family...
She would have let her because... So here's the thing, is, like, after... So the only instance in this family of, like, a really shitty, uncaring mother... And keep in mind, once again, I don't know anything about the first Ward Weaver's childhood. Okay. It was hard enough to even find the amount that I found on him.
And you're a fantastic researcher. Yeah.
Sometimes when I want to be. Ward II married a lady who did seem to have her children in mind. She seemed to want to be a good mom, and she seemed to have regular people emotions about caring for her children.
Whoa, did that just say Fairfield, California? That's where my grandma lives.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shit.
Oh, so it should be mentioned, sorry, I should have brought this up, that most everything up until we get about a third of the way into Ward III, almost all of this is in California. His murders were... Ward II's murders were in California.
Whoa.
Ward the second was raised in California.
In the little town that my grandmother lived in for the last 50 years. That's fucking crazy.
Right?
Oh, we're so connected.
It's fucking crazy.
Oh my God.
It's weird that we're unrelated. I think
is.
that'll be like the season 3 opener, is we'll find out that we actually are related.
Right? Totally. We'll find a way where it connects back.
I don't know. Do you have any wayward uncles who were free in October of 84?
And that's where we got originally the name from the podcast, is we look related, but we are not.
Yeah, we do look a lot alike.
In season 3, we'll finally have enough money to pay for, like, real genetic background searches, and we'll hire a PI and find out. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think.
Be...
If you know any good PIs.
Yeah. If you are a good PI, you let us know.
Mm-hmm.
We might have some money for you in the future. We don't at the moment, but we will.
That's true. Oh, man. So check this out. When Ward Weaver the third came into the picture, he was about 3 when they moved. So
from California?
Yes, okay. Initially. So Ward Weaver, his mom had the better interest in mind. She just could not do this with this overbearing mother-in-law.
Yeah.
It was too fucking much. So, which luckily I do not like relate to, because my mother-in-law is really, really cool.
Aww.
I lucked out. Yeah, it is actually really amazing. I lucked out hard. All of my in-laws are super awesome.
Aww.
Yeah, once again, I lucked out. So Ward Weaver the third, his mom left Ward Jr. when he was about 3, and they moved to Oregon. And despite having never known, not never, like Ward II would come and visit sometimes, but it was very much like he was very estranged. But he, even at that young age, just like how Ward Jr. was Little Pete, mm-hmm. Ward Weaver was soonly becoming Littler Pete.
Little Pete?
Pete, Little Pete, and Littler Pete. But yeah, oh my fucking Christ. So they have so many parallels. Ward Weaver Jr. would, you know, do all the greatest hits, like torture, you know, animals, small animals, cats, kittens. I'm not going to get into all of the really fucked up things that he did, but take down a pen and pencil, people, if you're actually, like, interested in hearing all of the gruesome details. These ladies did an amazing 3-episode deep dive into it that I gleaned some content from, and they really got into it. It's called Alternative Interests. You can find it on Spotify, and I'm assuming wherever else fine podcasts are found.
Wow.
Fine podcasts are found. It's episode 64, 65, and 66. It's a 3-parter, so kudos to them for giving me nightmares. So he would torture his sister. He would torture small animals. One of the ways that he tortured his sister was, other than cutting off the tip of her finger with a fucking axe.
This is Ward the Third?
Ward the Second.
Ward the Second, okay.
I actually made a greatest hits on here if you wanted.
Shit.
Oh, yeah. So he chopped off the tip of her finger with an axe. He tied her around a tree and put a noose around her neck. Now, he didn't hang the noose over, but, you know.
Yeah.
And so his sister was a year younger than him. So when he cut off her tip of her finger with a hatchet, she was 6 and he was 7.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so little.
I know. So, and then the hanging incident was when he was 8 and she was 7. So he had threatened to hang her. He goes as far as tying a noose around her neck and tying her to a tree where she remained for several hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and in my show notes it says other highlights. He stampeded cows toward her. He locked her. Oh my fucking! He locked her in a tool shed and set it ablaze.
How did this girl survive?
Oh my God!
My God.
He let her out after she started screaming, but it did cause a forest fire.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the really fucked part is Ward Weaver III had gone on to do similar things to his sister, who, keep in mind, his sister, Ward III's sister, had been like raped and molested by not only her grandfather but also her father.
Oh my God.
And then he would like shoot her with Ward III would like shoot her with BB guns and stuff. She said that she is still in therapy trying to unpack her childhood. And she will remain there.
She will always be there.
Yes.
Damn.
Right. So, not surprisingly, Ward Weaver Jr. had gone on to, and I'm not going to get into these crimes super severely, he went on to take on a couple of hitchhikers. He bludgeoned the man with a cheater pipe and then raped and strangled the man's girlfriend.
What's a cheater pipe?
Cheater pipe is kind of like, it's about as big as like an arm bone, and they use it to tie down the loads.
Oh, okay.
It looks kind of like a pry bar, but it's definitely good for bludgeoning, for sure. He didn't actually kill him, he just left him for dead.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, after you hit somebody like a dozen times with a metal object, you kind of...
You just figure you've done it, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that...
This is our very first heavy hitter episode.
Oh, yeah. So the man's name was Robert Radford. So the woman's name was Barbara Lavoie. And the long and the short of it is, this is where the echoes of Ward Weaver II's childhood comes back, because he apparently had committed rape before, and he just let her go.
Oh, shit. And of course, women didn't report it for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the day.
Because especially, like, okay, these people were not necessarily hitchhiking, but their car had broken down, and so they were going to get a ride to a phone. And so, yeah, something like that, it would have been like, oh, well, you shouldn't have gotten in the car with him. And it's like, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Cell phones won't be invented for another, like, 40 years. Yeah. Oh, are we just supposed to yell? Smoke signals?
What did you do to make it happen? Did
Right.
you look at him the wrong way? How do we know you didn't want it? Like,
Right.
oh God, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Like how,
That's, oh man, don't even,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
so he had raped her twice before he killed her. And he actually, by all accounts, he was thinking about letting her go. It needs to be noted, he was on a lot of trucker meth.
Oh, okay. So like Yellow Jackets and...
No, like legit just
Oh,
shitty biker
real
meth.
meth.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was called crank then. Okay, so he had said that he was hearing voices at the time. He was trying to plead insanity. Now, this may or may not have merit, though. He said that ever since the age of 17, he would hear voices, and it started out with just a female voice. And, well, here's the thing. The female voice would tell him, like when he was committing these crimes, for instance, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't take her. You shouldn't kill her. After he killed her, it was scolding him, telling him that he did a really bad thing. So this was actually kind of a voice of reason he should have listened to.
Yeah.
But in his interviews, he was more just like, kind of like, oh, well, fuck that voice. How unreasonable that is. The male voice in his head was saying fucked up things like, you need to do whatever it takes to get her, which included killing her boyfriend. You need to do this, do that, take her, da da da. But in his mind, he was like, yeah, that's the sensible voice.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my God.
just that kind of would tell you, like, it speaks to his mental state, I think. 11 times. 11 times is how many times he had hit him in the head, just for reference. So he had raped her twice, I believe. And then the third time, they were in the town that he was driving to, like his hometown. And I think that he was either going to let her go or maybe, I don't know, try to introduce her as the new nanny. I'm not honestly sure what his end game was or what he thought his end game was. But he started to rape her again. And I think that it was, in her mind, it was probably just getting taken from one location to a secondary location, because all of the rapes happened in the bed of his truck, of his semi-truck.
Oh my God.
And so I think that maybe then it kind of kicked in her mind of like, oh fuck, maybe he's gonna kill me. Because she still, even when she got into, or no, I'm sorry, she was already in the truck. Even after Robert had gotten out of the truck and not gotten back in, she didn't know that he was dead. I mean, she didn't have sure proof. She had asked Ward II, where's Robert? And he just did like this maniacal laugh and like, you're with me now. Which is the opposite of what anyone wants to fucking hear.
Yeah. Second location spells fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
So when he's trying to rape her, she bites him, like he's putting his hand over her mouth or something, and she bites him. She legitimately takes a chunk off of his fucking thumb, though, like a noticeable amount. And so then he strangles her.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, he strangles her. Because the whole biting thing, it fucking triggered him. He said he was going to let her, he was just going to take her out to the country and release her, like he had done with a few rapes before. But then she bit him, and well, fuck, and he lost control.
Yeah, you know.
This is what happens when people remain unchecked for several fucking generations. Because, like, none of the rapes got reported. It's the entirety of this story is pretty much what happens when kind of murderous white dudes go unchecked for generations.
I was going to say white privilege. They're starting to remind me of the family from that X-Files episode. You
little.
know the one, right? With the mom on the board under the bed. Yeah.
So, in 1978, Ward Jr. had gotten convicted of rape and assault. Do you want to know how long he was in there?
Oh, God. Like, yes, I do, but I feel like it's going to be like 14 months or something crazy.
Actually, you're pretty close. It was a year and a half.
Oh.
So, I had forgotten to include, after Ward Weaver Jr.'s wife had left him and taken their 3 kids.
To Oregon here, right?
Yeah, to Oregon. Not Oregon City specifically, but to the Pacific Northwest, yeah. After that, he had remarried.
Oh, no.
And they had had a few more kids.
He had more kids?
Yes, but here's the thing. He was a truck driver, and so he was gone quite a lot. So, I mean, he was not probably the best dad, but he was better because he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so his son, Rodney, remembers that he was just a little kid at the time when Ward had gone away for a year and a half, or when Ward the second had gone away for a year and a half. And he was just told that he was taking an extended vacation or something like that. He wasn't told that his father had been put away for this.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and so when all of this happened, and I'm talking like immediately after he kills her, he takes her to their house. So not into their house yet. So she was actually reburied 3 times.
Jesus.
Yeah. So initially, after she was killed, she was buried right outside of Oroville. Oroville's where he was living at the time with his wife and children. And that was more just like, oh shit, you know, it's 2 p.m. I can't come home with this dead teenager. It's gonna look bad. And so, but the kids did know that when he got home, he looked like he had been in a fight. And that's actually exactly what he had told the children, was that he was in a fight, in a bar fight, and somebody bit his thumb off.
Oh my God.
No, it was, like I said, it was noticeably like dangly. It was, yeah. She took a chunk. Once she figured out that she thought she was dying, she took her fucking pound of flesh. Good for her. But in this instance, it didn't really do any good because nobody would question him. He was a very scary, powerful guy. And so that night, after all the kids were asleep, he went and he took his wife's car. His wife was doing a night shift. He took his wife's car and moved the body from the shallow grave that he had dug right outside of Oroville to this kind of trench/ditch in his backyard that Rodney had dug, and then Ward put the body in there. And so it needs to be said, Rodney is Ward Weaver's younger half-brother.
Okay.
And they had not met at that time. Ward the second was still very much estranged from his family at that point. And then a few days later,
oh no,
he had made Rodney help him dig a deeper hole in the backyard under the premise of looking for a broken sewer pipe.
Oh no.
Okay, and this entire thing about all of these graves, and Rodney helping dig them, and Rodney, like I said, he was 10, he didn't really know what he was doing at the time. This is a parallel between this Ward Weaver and Ward the Third. His son did something very fucking identical. So here's the chilling part. Well, all of this is chilling. A few days later, he had Rodney, dig the hole with him. And it was a deeper hole, and he had put the body in there and then filled it up and put a concrete slab on top of it. And no, here's the weird part. Here's like wow, that's a weird excuse part. He built a little kind of deck on top of that, and he hung a clothesline, and he had told his wife that way she wouldn't get her feet wet while she was hanging the clothes.
I did it for you.
Yeah, I don't honestly understand,
sounds like either...
How would she get her feet wet hanging the clothes?
Right? Unless you're
Unless you're hanging it over like a really swampy area, in which case, why would you be hanging clothes there?
Yeah. And if you're digging it, okay, if your backyard is a swamp and you're digging a grave, like eventually it's gonna.
Right, and it's not. It seemed to be just
style.
regular ass fucking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
He's bad at this.
he was bad at lying.
Yeah, he's bad at lying.
Yeah. So what actually got him caught was he had he didn't obviously get caught at all for this. He had gone and tried to do it again. Yeah, that was his. Well, it went so good the first time.
No kidding. Oh my god.
And this is, I want to say maybe a year later that he tried and failed and got caught, thankfully.
Thank God.
Yes. When Ward Weaver 2, what had actually got him caught was when he, picked up 2 young teenagers. These were younger, though. These were, I want to say, like 15 and 17.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and they were hitchhiking as well. And he picked them up from Oregon. He calls one of his other trucker friends, and he's more or less like, hey, so we can, like, I need you to kill this kid. Yeah, so he involves another person in it, and so his trucker friend shoots the male victim in the head.
He's just like, oh yeah, I'm down. I got you.
So the thing is, truckers have a lot of loyalty. My husband drives truck. They have a lot of loyalty, but frankly, I don't know if they have just universally this much. It's not like he said it over the CB, like, breaker, 10, I need you to kill a teenager for me.
Yeah.
It was one of his, like, friends, but it was a trucker friend. So here's the thing. He shot him 3 times in the head. No, the kid, he lived long enough to give an accurate description of Ward the second semi-truck, and that's what got him caught. But meanwhile, Michelle, the female victim, was being kept in Ward Weaver's truck where she was repeatedly raped. Sometimes while his wife was away, she was taken inside the house and raped and stored in a closet.
Oh my God.
He eventually drove her out to rural California and released her.
Alive. Wow.
So, good, true to his word, he likely did not intend to kill Lavoie, his first female victim on the books. Both men were sentenced 42 to life for their involvement.
Dang.
Yeah. He, like I said, he had still been estranged from his family at that point. Or, not his family. He was estranged from his first set of children. They're all his family.
Yeah.
But he had been estranged from his first set of children for quite a while. And then oh my God, this is so bad. The trial is actually what had brought them close.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because he didn't have... Ward the Third's stepdad that was supposed to try to be like an improvement was the fucking opposite. So despite this is where we go into the bullet was already loaded, but this guy helped pull the trigger.
His stepdad.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Actually, funny thing, in one of the just like shitty, I think it was Investigation Discovery or something like that. It was a really bad one. It was on YouTube, and it had like the screen where the outer screen was bigger and had like a floral pattern, and then the inner screen was like half the size, and the voices were high, so that way they could avoid copyright infringement. So, it had said that Ward II's stepdad was named Vincent Tarragon.
Oh.
It wasn't.
It wasn't?
It wasn't, no.
They didn't even get it right.
No, not even a little.
Vincent Tarragon sounds like...
It's a really shitty, like... If I were to commit a crime, I would put on a fake mustache and a bowler cap.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, I'm Vincent Tarragon.
Yeah. If I was going to, like, commit a Ponzi scheme and rip off a bunch of people, I would be Vincent Tarragon.
Vincent Tarragon's a man you can believe in. That's a name you can believe in. Look at my mustache. Fuck. During that trial is when Ward Weaver III had kind of gotten back into contact with his dad.
Daddy, right. Daddy, it's me. It's little Pete.
Well, he seemed better than Vincent Tarragon.
For some reason, I want to call him like Vincent Tarragon DDS or something.
Right.
Like,
He's definitely a dentist. Definitely. No two ways. Actually, he was a longshoreman.
Oh.
Yes.
Ew.
Yeah.
They are salty. They
yes.
can be very salty.
I dated one for quite a while. You're correct. But yeah, so and I'm honestly assuming that in his mind his stepdad was so fucking bad that he likely did fantasize about his real dad, you know, his quote unquote real dad. And he likely did a little romanticize that relationship.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Right. Jumping into it, Ward Weaver III had grown close to his dad in prison. That may or may not have had an effect on his later life and his crimes, but it seemed kind of like he was already pretty fucked from the gate.
Yeah.
In the 70s, I want to say late 70s or early 80s, he was convicted of assault because he had hit this girl over the head with a cinder block. This girl was the daughter of a family who had actually taken him and his wife in. So another parallel between him and Ward II is they both had enlisted in the armed forces like at 18.
Oh.
Yeah, so with Ward III, though, after he had already enlisted, he sexually assaulted one of his female relatives.
Oh my god, a relative?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of incest in this story.
Oh, they totally are the X-Files family.
Yeah, more teeth, but that's it. And so the whole thing back then was like, oh, well, he's shipping off in a little bit anyway, so what would be the use of prosecuting him?
God, that's so...
Because maybe you don't want to release a person like this onto the world, like the wide fucking world. So, while he was in the Philippines, he had met his wife, Maria. He was in the Navy a very short time before getting... not dishonorably discharged, but it was like less than honorably discharged. Something like that. Where it was something I had never heard before, and I was like, okay. But it was more or less he wouldn't report. Like Maria was a bartender, and so he far better enjoyed her company and the company of alcohol than reporting in. So he very quickly, they were like, yeah, fuck right off with that shit.
I don't know why my mind went straight to like... if you rape someone, you're dishonorably discharged. But if you jerk off like on the deck of an aircraft carrier, then you get
less than honorably.
You get
discharged.
the less than honorable,
right?
Because you just
So fucking crazy. So after they got home, like to America, things did not get better. Surprise. She had their oldest son, Francis. And they got married, I want to say, like 5 months later. And he was controlling, he was abusive, he was everything, given his upbringing, a person would expect him to be. And not much more. He...
not with Grandma Dot in the picture.
Oh, Jesus Christ. He had been put in prison for, like, 3 years for that assault. And then... after his debatably third or fourth child was born, he seemed to kind of clean up his act. He and Maria got divorced. It was just a bad situation for all of them. So, side note, I used to hang out with Alex Weaver. it's not like we hung out one-on-one. We didn't have each other's phone numbers, but he was always hanging out with this other person who my friend group hung out with. And in almost all but maybe like 2 of the papers that I had seen, I mean, shit, even on like the Wikipedia, Alex Weaver is not mentioned.
And this is Ward the Third's son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So he had Francis, he had Alex, and he had Mallory. I had seen, I want to say it was either in this podcast or in one of my other like news articles, that there was another son who was younger than Alex. I don't know anything about that. But anyway, so I used to actually hang out with Alex Weaver, and he was a really nice guy, and he was very funny, and his brother Francis would hang around sometimes, but everyone always just said that Francis was a dick. He was never a dick to me, so I didn't really care, but he was older than us. I don't know, probably by like 4 or 5 years. I think Alex was maybe a year older than me or a year younger. He was right around my age, though.
That's a big gap when you're young, 4 or 5 years.
It is, yeah, because Francis was pretty much a whole-ass adult by then.
Yeah.
And we were, I don't know, like 14 or 15?
Dang.
Yeah, maybe, no, it was 15 or 16. And so a lot of the accounts don't include him. But another parallel after all of this happened, so I'm assuming that a lot of people who are listening to this are pretty familiar with the Ward Weaver crimes. He killed Ashley Pond and then Miranda Gaddis. Ashley Pond had accused him of rape, and it's likely that he did that. She had her own really terrible life where she had been raped by, I believe, either her dad or her stepdad. He was in prison for that, or awaiting trial for it. So one of the ways that Ward Weaver had controlled her was by saying, if you report this, I'm going to testify against you at your dad's hearing.
Oh my
And say,
God.
Oh, look, she even accused me of this and I didn't do anything wrong.
Oh my God.
He was very, very cunning, very manipulative. The things I'm going to say from now on are a mix of fact and hearsay.
Okay.
So, after the murders happened, that I'm just going to glean over because
of Ashley and Miranda.
You can find information on that literally fucking everywhere. Yeah. Just a small Google. And it's tragic, and it was really sad that it happened because it didn't need to. But he had essentially likely killed Ashley because she was, going to spill the beans that he had diddled her, and she had already told an adult, and there had already been, instances of him kissing her, like dropping her off at school and like kissing her on the mouth, and people already were kind of like, hey, this guy's a little fucking weird.
Oh, geez.
And then he had told Miranda's sister years later that he had killed Miranda Gaddis because he thought that she either knew something or had seen him moving the body, because Ward Weaver also had moved the body several times in order to avoid detection, like his dad. That's a parallel.
Oh,
and so he thought that she had seen something, and so he had killed her. And then after that, he had moved the body a few times. It was one of those things of like everybody in Oregon City knew it was him. There was a note saying dig it up, talking about the concrete slab. Another parallel.
Whoa.
So here's another parallel on top of that parallel. We had actually stopped hanging out with Alex Weaver after he had made a comment to one of our friends that I don't feel comfortable putting it in the podcast, but if you want to know, email us and I will tell you at length. But he had made a comment that was very offbeat for him because he was generally a very nice, very Bobby Hill type kid, and he had made kind of a what the fuck comment about those girls. And keep in mind, I didn't know Alex's last name. We just called him Pooter, or Poot Dog. So I didn't even know his first name for the longest time. I had no idea that was his dad, but he had made a comment about that situation that was really what the fuck. And so we stopped hanging out, and it was later found he had told one of the friends in the friend group, and you can actually find this on a couple of news articles as well, that he had dug the hole.
Oh, Jesus. These fucking people having their kids dig their holes.
And there was a concrete slab on top of it. Now, he had said that he didn't know what the barrels contained. He had dug a very deep hole.
Because everyone just has fucking barrels full of, like, butterfly wings and flower clippings.
Well,
There's always a body.
Here's the fucking weird thing is, yeah, like you said, like, because everyone has just barrels laying around. He said that they had put the barrels in because they were gonna put a concrete slab on top and then a jacuzzi on top of that, and so the barrels needed to be there to stabilize the dirt.
Well, what if he gets wet feet hanging up the fucking laundry?
Right.
We're gonna have an issue then too.
Exactly.
Can we get some barrels?
That's exactly it. And so, so there's the parallel of Ward II and Ward III joined the armed forces right out of high school. They had previous crimes before the murders that they just got the lightest of slap on the wrist for, or not at all. Nothing happened.
Jesus.
They both tortured small animals and their fucking sister. Actually, Ward III tortured his littlest brother, in kind of similar ways, not sexually tortured, but in kind of the same ways as Ward II, his smaller brother was terrified of dogs, and so he would like put his face up to the chain link fence where the neighbors had a dog, or he tied him to a tree for infinite time. Things like that. There's a lot of parallels in that. And keep in mind, once again, Ward Weaver II had little contact with his kids after Ward, the oldest, was like 3.
So it's just in there. It's just genetically in there.
But it could have been expressed because their stepdad was such a piece of shit.
Oh my God, this woman, her fucking radar on who to marry
is terrible.
Like way off.
And
I'm not maligning the victim. I am a little. I don't know.
Back then, like, a kid had to have a father no matter how fucking shitty it was.
Yeah.
And then, they dug the holes. Both used concrete slabs. Actually, the youngest brother of Ward Weaver, Rodney, who had dug the hole for his dad, he genuinely had no idea what was going on. Rodney actually, as opposed to Ward Weaver, who kind of looked up to his biological father, Rodney Weaver took all of that as a cautionary tale to stay the fuck away from trucker speed and to not be a violent piece of shit.
Yeah.
And so where this really, really all loops around is Francis Weaver in, I believe, 2016.
Alex's older brother. Firstborn son.
Firstborn son of Maria and Ward. He ends up getting indicted for murder because it was what I can only call an arranged robbery gone wrong. Nobody was meant to die. It sounded, when I had heard a more in-depth version of what it was on that podcast I told you about earlier, it seemed like a tweaker scheme. Having grown up in Oregon City where there's a shitload of tweakers.
Yeah.
It seemed exactly like a tweaker scheme.
See, and when you say that, I know exactly what you mean. Because we've all been around those tweaker schemes. Like in that movie Spun, where they have all those big dreams of, like, robbing the cook or whatever, and then they just, totally.
That is exactly it. It's a tweaker scheme.
That was filmed in Eugene, wasn't it?
Oh, that makes sense, don't it?
Again?
Yep.
All right, so Francis is in on a tweaker scheme.
So Francis was in on a tweaker scheme, and he ended up, this guy got fucking killed. And so Francis fled. It was supposed to be a scheme for, drugs, essentially. And Francis ended up getting convicted of the murder. And this is in Canby. Getting convicted of the murder and firearm charges as well. And he was sentenced to life without parole.
Wow. So we jump from Grandpa Ward II, who's like, to all, not, 14, 16 months or something in jail for murder, down to like oopsie tweaker murder and just life. I mean, that's a really interesting that right there alone is a really interesting progression in the sentencing.
Yes, it is, but so with this, there was precursors to it. Like, he didn't do anything. Like, he was, I don't know, kind of shitty to his girlfriends, I remember.
Yeah.
Like, he was kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
But like I said, he was never mean to me. I always thought he was kind of handsome.
That makes it even worse, is like, he wasn't that type as his grandfather.
No, not at all.
And he got a harder sentence.
Well, earlier, I believe that they were in Idaho, 1999, he had shot, for no reason, I'm supposing, just mischief reasons, he shot a shotgun into a truckload of teens, and one of the teens in there was his best friend. It wasn't malicious, it was just him being a fucking idiot.
Oh, yeah, dumbass.
And so, like, his best friend actually got injured in that. In 2005, he was convicted of manufacturing and delivering a Schedule I controlled substance. A week later, he was acquitted of a burglary that he had been convicted of early. So, I mean, it's not like he was just sitting in a fucking white room eating saltines. But, yeah, it's not like he was just sitting there doing nothing wrong and then was like, you know what, I'm going to do meth and I'm going to get some tweaker schemes.
Totally. Okay, that does put it in some perspective.
It was actually, and it's good because he seems to be the first round of Weavers to get a little bit more held accountable for his crimes, but he was the one who had called the police to let them know that his dad had killed those girls. He was some of the main evidence. So just like how Ward II, he had killed, some people, and then some people got free and told the cops. So Ward III, he raped and was trying to kill Francis's girlfriend. Francis's 19-year-old girlfriend. And she luckily got free. Ward lived right on Beaver Creek Road, which is one of the main roads. So, and the cops were already hot on his trail. Ward had gotten them over there on the premise of he was trying to, like, get on the lam, trying to fucking run, because shit was getting hot for him. His own fault, mind you. Yeah. He would turn away no news journalists. Like, he was all over the fucking place.
Wow.
He was a lawyer's worst nightmare.
Jesus.
He would not quit fucking talking. Anyway, so that's what got him caught. And Francis at that point was like, nope, fuck it. I know everything and I'm telling. And then with this one, he even then he had said something to the effect of, like, I don't want Weavers to be known as being bad guys. I want them now to be known as being good guys or something. And then he goes and does shit like this.
Yeah, dude. But plan foiled.
So actually, Francis and Ward Jr., their sentences might be getting a little bit different now.
Oh.
Yeah, actually pretty new development. So Francis, his trial, it relied on one of the other people who was involved in the murder of the Canby man, was going to make a plea agreement and testify against Francis, but it was more or less like, we're going to give you the death sentence, or you cannot testify in favor of Francis Weaver.
Oh, shit.
And so that was ruled unconstitutional. He's actually getting a new trial next month in November.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in September of 2020 is when it was overturned.
Okay.
Ward Weaver Jr. is serving a death sentence in San Quentin.
Damn.
Yeah. Has been for the last 35 fucking years, because he keeps going through appeals, right?
Of course.
That's the thing. If you're on death row, you get unlimited appeals.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to if you're just on regular row, you get, I think, 2 or something.
And you've got a way better quality of life on death row. And
at
least like 30 years.
So in California, they had actually, I was Prop 66, I believe. It's intended to speed up death sentence appeals. Mm-hmm. And so he could actually be released into Gen Pop soon.
Wow.
For his 85 conviction, which is a shame because he was actually a suspect in 26 other murders along that route, and he had told the prosecutor at that point, I will give you more information about those if you take death off of the table.
And they wouldn't fucking
No,
do
they
it.
wouldn't.
26 cases could have been...
26
Oh my
fucking
God.
cases.
Paul Holes would have a fucking conniption with that.
Yes.
Ooh, wow.
So-
So that's the story of the Weavers.
The Weavers.
Oh my God.
The Wild and Wacky Weavers.
Wild and Wacky Weavers.
And so, also, if anybody has any more information, any more anecdotes, if you want to tell me I'm wrong about some stuff, if you want me to cite my sources, please do. Please hit us up at utterlyunrelatedpod@gmail.com. We would love to hear it. And also, like us, subscribe, or don't.
Website and merch are coming soon.
Yeah.
But you should like us, and you should subscribe, and you should rate us, because
Yeah.
that's how we get on the radar for the podcast world, and we need to be on the radar.
Exactly. And we will absolutely be doing a follow-up episode to let you guys know what happened with Francis Weaver and all of that. So like I said, if you just hit us up and let us know what you know, or tell me I'm wrong or tell me I'm right, we will include that in subsequent episodes.
Do it. Do it.
Do it.